Okay, welcome to today's chat, which is on property management. David and Campbell usually do those, but today I've got the job of doing it. And so for those of you who don't know me, my name is Lisa Dudson, and I work with some of the clients at the Property Factory. Very briefly, my background is over 20 years as a financial advisor and property investment specialist. And I've written a number of best-selling books in New Zealand, including The Complete Guide to Residential Property Investment in New Zealand, the New Zealand Property Guide, and my recent book, The New Zealand Money Guide. I was also previously the Vice President of both the Auckland and the New Zealand Property Investors Associations. But most importantly, over the years, I've built up quite a substantial portfolio of, a variety of investments. So, that experience as an investor and as a trained advisor and teaching people about property investment is, I think, is what is important, is actually getting some guidance and talking to some people that have actually walked the walk rather than just read about it in a book. So coming to today, a key question that many investors have right now in these uncertain COVID-19 times is, will they get a tenant? If they do get the tenant, what changes might they need to be aware of, and what are the sort of things you need to do differently? So on that note, I'd like to introduce Niqui Keen from Keen on Rentals in Auckland, which I'm excited to introduce. I've known Niqui for about 12 years. She was originally a client of mine back then, looking at how to build her wealth for the long term in retirement, which is why many of you are looking at property investment. And now she manages my property portfolio, so a really important part of my team. And she's by far the best property manager that I've ever worked with. So that's been great. She's been awesome. So Niqui, tell us about your property management business and sort of how you came to get into the business, and what are the sort of typical clients that you work with?
Thank you, Lisa, and thank you very much for the opportunity to contribute and speak to everybody around what's happening. Yes, Lisa reminded me that it's 12 years plus ago that we first met each other in the role of Lisa being advisor and me being client. So I see myself as a little bit of a late starter in the property investment game. It wasn't something that I had contemplated doing previously, but that was Lisa's advice, was to invest in property as a way of generating a platform for wealth and income towards future retirement goals and savings goals.
And Niqui, sorry to interrupt you there, but I did look at your initial questionnaire, and without divulging your financial position, it's been pretty impressive what you've managed to achieve in 12 years' time. So even if you do start a bit later down the track, with a bit of focus, it's quite incredible what you can achieve.
Yes, exactly. So being given a bit of the right push in the right direction, one of the things I started to do was to really educate myself about property investment and how to go about it, and how to go about purchasing properties, and invested in a number of sort of training packages with people who were doing that work. And I ended up specialising and focusing on the Auckland apartment market as a specialist area of property to invest in, and spent the next sort of couple of years really doing a lot of wearing out of shoe leather, looking at different apartments, working through the financial equations, making sure what you thought you were looking at was going to generate the return on investment. So I ended up purchasing a number of small apartments, quite small, and as part of that I got up close and personal with the business of being a landlord. So typically the apartments, when I purchased them, were not in great condition. They tended to be pretty run down, pretty tired, things broken inside them, pretty messy, pretty dirty, which put a lot of buyers off, which was fine because rectifiable. So I then got involved in bringing them up to a really good standard that would attract a really good tenant. So I got involved with doing minor renovations. There's only so much work you can do inside an apartment complex, but certainly repairs and repainting and carpeting and putting in new furniture and really making it look like a very nice livable space, and making sure that it was comfortable and practical for the target audience that you were dealing with. And from that I got involved with then finding new tenants to put into the properties, managing the tenancies for the life of the tenancies, and replacing tenancies as they turned over. And I came to be noticed by other investors that was also specialising in the apartment space, because it's quite a small community there, so people know who's active and who's doing what. And I ended up getting sort of tapped on the shoulder by somebody who would say, oh, hey, look, my tenant's about to move out and I'm going to be overseas at that time. Do you think you could help me with finding a replacement tenant? Or I've just bought this apartment down by the waterfront and it's in shocking condition. It needs a complete renovation and I've got this major project on at work. Do you think you can help me? And so I go from doing favours for people that I know and helping out on a sort of pay-as-you-go basis to now running a small independent property management business with a team of, there's 4 of us working together and looking after around 180 tenancies across the wider Auckland area. So we do specialise in apartments, but we do residential property as well. So we go as far north as Gulf Harbour and as far south as Papakura, and look after quite a wide range of property types and how to manage those in those different areas. So it's been an incremental journey. It's been based on pretty much referral based in terms of people who either know me directly through the work that I do, or somebody who knows me gets connected and put in place, and that's the way the business.
And that's a pretty powerful testament too to the quality of your work is the referrals and a number of my friends who are quite significant investors. You manage their portfolios for, and I know some of them are pretty fussy, so that speaks in volumes as well. So Niqui, coming to today, because we've got some interesting times to say the least with the whole COVID-19. So what are the things that specifically people need to be aware of right now? So that, what does level 3 mean for instance? Let's start there.
Level 3, I guess we've got to think about in comparison to level 4. So what changes? So level 4, effectively, there was emergency legislation put in place around things like being able to apply to have tenancies ended for rent arrears and the timing of that. It used to be that if a tenant was 21 days in arrears, then by law the tenancy tribunal had to end the tenancy. There was no discretion there. That's pushed out now to 60 days, and also there's some contingency in there that if the tenant is showing some reasonable attempt to catch up with rent arrears, then they can still stay on even though they're substantial. And that's a lot of money to be behind on your rent, if you think 2 months, 3 months of rent. There's contingencies around tenancies continuing and the rights of tenancies to continue while we're in lockdown scenarios, and there were some restrictions around moving. Tenants could move, interestingly, under level 4, but with some restraints. The moving companies weren't allowed to operate. They're not essential services. So if a tenant could move themselves from one property to another using their own resources or just the resources of their bubble, then they were able to do that. So it tended to fit more people who were in rent by the room style of accommodation or renting furnished properties. So they just pack their own personal possessions and suitcases and get from one place to the other. The challenge, though, was that as property managers, we couldn't go to the property. We couldn't travel there because we are not essential workers, so that's not essential travel. So we couldn't do an exit inspection when a tenant left. There was goodwill on both sides. It was my experience. So tenancies that were ending and tenants that were leaving did their best to show they had left the place in good condition, sent us photos after they'd done their clean-up job, locked up and left the keys in the property. But that's how they stand at the moment. I've been there. I haven't been able to get cleaning services in either, and that hopefully we will be able to start dealing with some of the vacant properties under level 3. There's a bit of uncertainty around that at the moment.
And just before go into level 3, have you had many move out during this time? Any tenants move out?
I've probably got about 8.
Okay, so it's a reasonable amount, yeah.
But they're primarily in that rent by the room accommodation, which tends to be relatively short term. They're still residential tenancies, they're not boarding house agreements or anything like that, but they can be 3 to 6 months. So where people had made arrangements to move elsewhere and that was already in play, they have continued and moved on. I've had a couple of tenants in those properties too who were immediately impacted as soon as the level 4 lockdown was put in place. So for example, their employment was terminated immediately. They were given 1 week's pay and that's all that they had. Their employer was basically closing down that arm of their business forthwith. And as a lot of those people were also not New Zealand residents or citizens, they on work visas or working under a working holiday visa, that kind of things, they're actually not entitled to support from those agencies either. So they're actually cut off from
pretty tough.
And so they have spoken to us about it, and we've agreed to end their fixed term maybe earlier than the date. If they had a place to go, they could sort of make their bubble with a group of friends and not incur the entire cost of a rental where they've got no source of income and they don't know when they'll be able to get one, which makes sense for everybody. So we have had a few of those. The other ones that we've been dealing with is where people are staying in the tenancy but are now running into financial difficulty. So it's a case-by-case basis of what the tenant's circumstances are and what the landlord's circumstances are, and what can we negotiate between the parties to come to an arrangement that gets through this period.
And it's interesting because there's been a lot of talk in the media about, the poor tenants and their, lack of ability to pay their rent, which is, absolutely, a problem. But there's also a lot of landlords out there, and I think it's 91% of landlords in New Zealand only have one property, and most of those are your mums and dads just trying to get ahead. And they're, they've got
no winners here.
No, there's no winners. But there's been very little talk about the landlords having to pay their mortgages and then the mortgage holidays, which is interesting. And just to briefly, I saw an example the other day where on the sort of an average Auckland mortgage of sort of $520,000, if you took one of these mortgage holidays, which holiday is a terrible word, it added 6-month mortgage holiday. It added 1 year and 3 months to the term of your 30-year mortgage, and an interest cost of $36,000 on today's interest rates, which are very low. So not much of a holiday. So it's say it's an interesting time for you to try and negotiate between both parties, because both are hurting.
Yes, exactly. And to be fair, my observation is that everybody recognises that it's a really unwelcome situation that nobody is the cause of. We all inherit it. We're all affected by it in whatever the personal way is. And there's been enormous willingness on both parts of tenants and landlords to work together to find a solution. So the solutions have ranged from, okay, well, you can't operate for the 4 weeks of lockdown, therefore I'll give you a rent reduction for the 4 weeks of lockdown and not expect that to be repaid. But if things go longer than that, then we'll have to look at something which is maybe a reduced rent for a longer period, but a payback plan when things come up to scratch or however. So some landlords have been able to say, look, I recognise the situation that you're in, and here's my contribution, but it's got a cap on it. Others have put in quite comprehensive plans to say, this is what I'm going to do with the rent level now, this is what I can offer if things get more tight, and this is how the payback plan would work. There's both tenants don't want to lose the homes that they're in and have the uncertainty of trying to find somewhere new in this environment when they're financially compromised, because that's a difficult situation for them when applying for a tenancy. Owners
So,
want to lose tenants who, apart from this circumstance, have been absolutely reliable and responsible, and want to maintain those tenants in their properties, because the downside of having a vacancy when we don't know how long it will be for and what it will take to get new tenants in is also an uncertainty. So everybody's feeling their way.
yep. So moving forward to level 3. So, what can we expect in level 3? And interestingly, I'm moving house next month, and I rang and booked the moving company today and said, hey, can I book it? And he said, yep, but we won't know until, my move date is the 21st of May, whether we're in level 2 or level 3, but they're operating next week, but with social distancing. So I can't, for instance, help with the moving under level 3, but they can move me.
Yes. So there's a little bit of opening of the door. We're being given, and the clarification of what level 3 means is still underway. There are some debates happening with the government guidelines saying there will be more to come on this, on the specifics. It seems fairly clear that we will not be able to do things like routine inspections for properties under level 3 where a tenant is in residence. So having somebody like myself, like the property manager, even if it's one person and even if it's social distancing, but going into a home that is occupied, won't be allowed under level 3. The Insurance Council, as I understand, is acknowledging that people's ability to show that they've done due diligence in terms of routine inspections for their residential properties should the need for a claim arise, is well aware of the constraints, so that there shouldn't be a pushback for that reason. What we're not sure about, we're fairly confident that we won't be able to do viewings for properties that are coming up for renewal where the tenants are going to be leaving, and normally we would have a period of sort of 3 to 4 weeks before the tenant was moving out where we'd be marketing the property and potentially showing potential new tenants through, so that we've got the best opportunity to get a new tenancy in place with very minimal vacancy between the tenancies. We're fairly confident we won't be able to do that where the property is occupied. So the question comes down, will we be able to do viewings for vacant properties? And that's in dispute at the moment. There's been a statement made that from a real estate perspective, you can't do open homes. However, a single appointment by viewings by appointment where there's a single attendee and we manage social distancing and the property itself is vacant with nobody living there, we're hoping that we are able to do that. In the meantime, we're doing as much as we can to be able to market the properties and do as much of the process as we can remotely. So having good marketing material and good presentation through professional photography and those sorts of things. We're going to be looking at doing video walkthroughs for a number of our properties as well, and then pre-screening anybody who registers interest for the property, so we have a detailed conversation with them about what they're looking for. Are they a good fit for the property and the tenancy, those sorts of things, out to screen out people from coming to do a viewing when it doesn't necessarily really suit either party. So that means if we're allowed to show them, it will only be the people who have a high level of interest and compatibility with it.
And so talking about viewings then, have you had much interest from prospective tenants contacting you and going, hey, I am looking, once we kind of get to a point where I can look?
We've taken the approach that we haven't listed any of our properties until we're quite clear on when we can show them. One of the tricks is the freshness of a listing is what attracts the main level of interest when it first goes up. So if you put something up and say this might be coming available in the future and it's there for a month and people don't know, they'll kind of move on typically, but we're not in a typical environment, so who knows. I do know that a number of property managers do have listings operating at the moment, and they are receiving applications on the basis that if we get to the point where we've cleared you and everything else is good to go, the final step in the procedure would be to actually see the property and sign off on the tenancy, but you're pre-approved, if you like, before you get there, because everything else is kind of being covered. So there's a number of property managers who are taking that approach, and we're about to embark on the same thing.
But I guess in reality, you know, I mean, our cases yesterday, new cases were 5, and new cases today were 6. I mean, we're looking really good. So there's a very good chance, I think, that on the 11th of May, we might be in level 2. So I guess it's not far away.
Exactly.
But I guess another question that people are asking, investors are asking, is going, gosh, you know, there's so much chaos around us right now, you know, and lots of discussion about property prices. And I have listened to lots of economic commentaries and over the last couple of weeks. In particular, Tony Alexander is one that I like a lot. And I seem to think that there's kind of a bet each way about where the housing market's going to go. Might be a bit more of an impact in the rural centres, but in the main centres it seems to be that even if we do have a slight pullback of values and you know, supply and demand, then it's going to be recover fairly quickly. But putting all that aside, none of us can control that, right? We can't control the economy, and I think sometimes a lot of us have got quite caught up in the media. So bringing it right back to an individual landlord who has properties today and is maybe thinking about purchasing another investment property, what are the sort of things that they can do to make sure that they are higher up the list in terms of being attractive to those tenants floating around?
Yep, definitely. And that's the key, is to how to put your property ahead of the pack and be the tenant's sort of number one preferred choice, if you like. And it comes down to the basics. These things are not rocket science. So the property has to be well maintained and in good condition, not looking run down or showing age, that kind of thing. Needs to be serviceable and practical for what's inside it. Definitely, it's of good marketing value to be able to show that it is compliant or working towards compliance with the new healthy homes standards, especially as we're coming into winter and the heating scenarios and things like that. There is a little bit of tax relief that has been offered through the emergency legislation associated with COVID-19, so that it used to be that any expenditure over 500 just came out of was deemed to be more than repairs and maintenance, and you had to capitalise that in your tax returns. That has been extended substantially to for the next 12 months, from March 2020 to March 2021, and even beyond that, it's still at least doubled to $1,000. So there's a window of time whereby, if you do your healthy homes compliance, it might almost all of those things, if you need to put money into them, you'll be able to claim it all as R&M on your in your tax return. So tiny sparks of joy there. But presentation and marketing and skill in being able to identify the correct tenants, because we really, depending on the target market for your property, we're really looking for quality tenants and consistency of tenure. Those are the key things that really make your investment, return on investment, work from a financial point of view.
And I think the other thing that I've always said to you and other property managers I've had in the past is I'd rather drop the rent by $10, $20, $30 a week and get a good quality tenant today than actually have it vacant for a couple of weeks trying to get the extra dollars, because it nets out actually surprisingly quickly, and I think quality tenants can actually save you a lot of money. So I suppose there's a bit of lateral thinking sometimes and going, well, what am I, so how do you best present your property? And it may be that you include Sky TV, or you include some sort of incentive to get them, and then run a grocery voucher or a first 3 weeks worth of rent or something like that. But that's a lot of landlords go, well, why should I be spending that? But at the end of the day, if you think about your property investment as a business and you're looking at trying to do sales in your business, there is some marketing spend that you have to be thinking about, and all business think about marketing spend. And I guess it's the same as a property investor, is what are the things that I need to put a bit of money and effort into to try and make my property more attractive and, like you say, go up to the top of the pile. And
we sort of done all of those things. So in order to get a property rented in a time where it's actually difficult to attract tenants because it's a low point in the rental cycle, for example, it may well be that for a period of time you include the utilities. So you've actually got the electricity and water supply or the broadband contract running for 3, 4, 5 months. And then when you go to renew, that incentive drops away and you're improved. But getting a tenant in within a shorter time frame at a low point in the rental cycle is still going to, over the course of your annual income for that investment property, is going to give you the payback. Within apartments, many of them are furnished properties. We also find that if we, particularly when we were dealing with a lot of overseas people, that will change now because they're not going to come for a while. But people who are relocating, being able to offer a linen package as well as the furnishings, so that people who arrived with no transport, not knowing where to go, and just their suitcase, were able to move in and sleep in the bed for the night and not have to figure out how to do all of that stuff. So it's just an added advantage that allows somebody more easily to say yes to your property when they're looking at multiple properties. So there's lots of ways to go about it.
And I think that's an important thing in a property manager, because sometimes I've shook my head at some of the property managers I've had in the past, because I've had properties in a couple of different locations in New Zealand, and I'm like, oh, for God's sake, use some common sense, let's, start thinking, strategizing about how you can think a little bit differently to, some of the standard property managers out there. So one of the questions I have too is, why use a property manager? I mean, sometimes when I'm doing my annual accounts and I work out how much I spend on property management every year, and I go, holy moly, that would make quite a big difference to my bank balance if I did it myself. And with all the years of experience that I have, I could probably do a reasonable job of it, but I still don't, and I get you to do it for me, Niqui. So,
why am I worth?
Yeah. So why are you worth your money, and why get a property manager? Because sometimes it's people think that to do them manage their own properties, but it ends up being a bit of a false economy.
It can, and again, I think it comes down to the nature of the property and where you are as an investor and your relationship with it. I certainly have helped out in terms of tenant recruitment and finding suitable tenants and doing all the screening, so it was done really well for somebody who might be renting a basement flat in the home that they live in. So they're both on site. They want to have good people there because they're living basically at their own property, but there isn't a great deal of value in having an intermediary in the property manager sense, because they're going to attend to maintenance issues, they're going to be able to do their own property inspections and things like that. So they're really probably just needing an advisor service around keeping up to date with legislation and requirements and those sorts of things. However, if you're a really busy person and you've got another job, this isn't your job, the frustration for landlords who see that fee coming out of their statement every month is, they're getting paid for doing nothing. Well, if they're not doing much, that's because they're probably a really good property manager.
Yeah, absolutely.
Under control. And it's easy when you're we call it being a fair weather landlord. When everything's fine sailing, it's not that hard to do. It's when you run into the sticky stuff around, I think my tenant has abandoned this property. They're not there anymore. I think they're gone. What do I do? Or in the current scenario, my tenants are coming to me and saying they can't afford to pay the rent, and I can't afford for them not to pay the rent. What do I do? Or what's the legal requirement now for this property under the Healthy Homes legislation, and when does it start kicking in? What time frame have I got, and how do I go about doing that? My tenants now getting more and more behind on the rent. They keep promising me that they're going to bring it up to date, and they do make some little bits of sporadic payments, but it doesn't come into play, and I never know if I'm going to have enough money coming in to meet my mortgage payment. What do I do? So it's when there's choppy waters, not fair weather sailing, that's when the property manager kicks in and makes sure that evens out for you and takes care of that, and for the most part is preemptive and preventative, so that you don't experience it, or certainly you don't experience it to the level that you tend to when people are unsure of how to do that.
And I think looking at because I've had tons of property investment clients over the years, and I guess there's a couple of areas that I see that they don't do well when they're managing their own property, is that recruitment process of your tenant, because they don't necessarily, because when you're an experienced looking for tenants, you kind of know all the tricks, right? A lot of the time you kind of get a feel for how do you find the right tenant. It's a bit of an intuition that you build up because you're used to talking to them. So it's recruitment
based on experience too.
Yep.
You've seen hundreds, if not thousands, of clients in their financial statements and their books and how they've approached it.
I know when they're not telling me things.
You've got to read that.
Yeah.
If you run 2 investment properties and you only do new tenant recruitment every 3-4 years on them, there's only a very small cadre of potential tenants that you're viewing, and then you're confining your choice to that based on what you see on the day and your experience, whereas we're actually seeing thousands of them, and based on the way they interact with us, their communication style, what they put forward in terms of presenting themselves, how they are, it's still really important. We can do as much as we can remotely, but it's still really important to meet people, and definitely we have a fine home sense where we can stand on the doorstep of a property and watch the prospective tenant coming up the driveway, and we've got that straight away.
Yeah, and I guess the other 2 things are checking the rents, right? Because I get you checking the rents daily, whereas a lot of people that manage their own properties check them every now and again. So, and you need to really check them daily, because once if they don't pay, you need to get onto it quickly. And the other really key area that I see is people don't put the rents up very often. So they've had a good tenant. So I've got lots of clients who've had tenants for years, and the rent is so far below market that they could have paid for a property manager 3 or 4 times in the space of the year by the discount that they've had to market rent. So those are the sort of things I think that people think, oh well, I'm not paying a property manager, but your rent's 10% below the market, so aren't you kind of ending up at the same financial place at the end of the day?
Yeah, and it's kind of one of those key things to set the expectation that rental reviews will be a regular part of a tenancy if they are undertaken, and where we are looking to increase rent levels, there's a good basis for doing that. We have to demonstrate to the tenants that we're not imposing a rental increase that's not aligned with market rates. So there's research to do around how to do that, but having it as a process that does happen usually on an annual basis, where we do a rent review. Now it may be that you don't increase the rent when you do your rent review, and you've got a reason for that as well. So that's another conversation to have with the owners about what and how. But to do it, to actively do it, and we're a little bit shy of what we see as confrontation, particularly as Kiwi. So asking for something feels like, I want you to pay more rent, feels a bit uncomfortable for lots of people, so they tend to shy away from it. And similarly, they can shy away from things that they're not quite happy about, that in the way the tenant's living in the property or maintaining the property, there may be an issue. It's not a super critical one at this time, but they're not quite happy, but they don't want to say anything because they don't want to upset them, because they don't want them to leave, because they don't, that kind of...
Yeah, no, I totally understand.
Uncomfortable, whereas doing it with a professional intermediary, and that's the job, and it's managed professionally, that takes care of that, and things keep on that.
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree. And like you said, there's a lot of changes to legislation now. So I think it's a little bit harder to be a property manager these days than maybe what it was in the past. So Niqui, just in finishing off, how do people get hold of you if they're wanting to talk to you about their property management?
Sure. And probably the easiest way is just to look at the contact details on our website. So that's keenonrentals.nz. It's not .co.nz, just .nz, and Keen on Rentals with an S. Email me directly. My name sticks out. Niqui is spelled Niqui at keenonrentals.nz. So I'm the Niqui with a Q. Not many of us have them. Or I'm on 021 655 675. So just give me a call, send me a text, and I'll be in touch.
Great. Well, look, Niqui, thanks for your time today. It's much appreciated. And look, just in closing, I can't stress enough how important it is to have a really great property manager. And I think they're absolutely worth every dollar, even if I do kind of wince a wee bit when I'm adding up how much I spend every year. So thanks. And look, again, if you want to talk to Niqui and have any questions, then get in contact with her. So thanks very much for joining us today.
You're very, very welcome. Thank you, Lisa, and thank you for your kind words.